the first place that the thing is going to go away is mental. If you keep thinking over here 1 meter, 1 centimeter away from you, then nothing, you're going to stay at that one meter. You have to think first further. The Prophet ﷺ once saw Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu climbing a tree. And some of the Sahaba, they saw him and he was very skinny, he was very thin. He was very he wasn't very big. So then the Sahaba were laughing at him and how skinny he was. The Prophet ﷺ says, he looks thin to you, but on the day of Qiyamah he will be more heavy than the mountain of Uhud. So the Prophet ﷺ saw this. The Prophet ﷺ saw benefit in everyone, and he saw ways to go forward. He never stuck here. Us, we need to think of the same. Why do we feel that we cannot do anything significant in our lives for the deen of Allah? What makes us feel that way? I'll tell you what makes us feel that, what makes me feel that way, and what makes you feel that way as well. All it is a lack of tawheed and understanding of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Now someone's going to ask, how? I think I'm a weak person. I don't have strength. When I say I'm weak and I only have this much ability to do something, I have limits. I cannot do anything past that. I am weak. I am not strong. You think, or we think we're being humble. But think at the end of the day, that little 5% that you have, when you say I can only do this, I can't do past that, that means you think that 5% is from yourself. You think that 5% is your strength. You think that 5% is something that you have of your own. Where does that 5% come from? From Allah. Allah, La ilaha illallah means La khaliqa illallah. La mu'azziza illallah. There is nothing that comes except for Allah. That 5% that you have is from Allah. And you tell me, is there a difference between this much strength from Allah for that 5% and someone else's 90% for Allah? Is there any difference for Allah? It's the exact same thing. When someone understands Iman and La ilaha illallah properly, then high aspiration makes sense to them. Because they know, for me, the weakness that I have is all from Allah. And the strength that someone else has is also from Allah. The Allah that gave him strength can give me strength as well. The Allah that gave that person the ability to speak can give me the same ability. The Allah that gave that person the ability to give da'wah can give me the same ability. The Allah that gave that person knowledge can give me the same knowledge. And what does Allah say? وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Muslim, telling them not to be weak, وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ. You are going to be the most high, the ones who overcome, the strong ones. If in kuntum mu'mineen, if you are people with Iman. What does that mean? Everyone's a mu'min, right? Allah is talking to the Sahaba, saying, as long as you have true Iman in your hearts, that time you will always be the highest. Because you realize that strength only comes from Allah. And Allah gives the other example. He says about the Muslims, when the Prophet ﷺ went to one of the tribes in Medina, the Jewish tribes, that had broken a pact, they had broken a contract or an agreement after a war. They betrayed the Muslims. So the Prophet ﷺ went there to deal with them. And the story is not important at this juncture, but the important thing is what's mentioned in the Quran. Allah says, what is the mind state of those people you are going to who betrayed you? لَا أَنْتُمْ أَشَدُّ رَهْبَةً فِي صُدُورِهِمْ مِنَ اللَّهِ. You, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Sahaba, you make them more scared than Allah. You are more scary to them than Allah. They fear you more than they fear Allah. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَوْمٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ. That is because they are people who don't understand. Allah never said they're people who have low Iman, they have low trust, they have low faith, He said they're people who don't understand. What does Iman mean? Iman means to understand at the end of the day. It means to understand that Allah is the one who created everything. No. That's what Iman means. To understand that any strength that comes is from Allah. That's what Iman means. It means to understand that everything that's happening is because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَوْمٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ. Those people who fear you more than others, they do not understand that the strength that you have is only from Allah. And when they betrayed you, they didn't fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who could have destroyed them right then and there. And that same Allah who, if He doesn't destroy them in the next life, is going to deal with them in a much harsher way. It's a lack of understanding. When we want to have high aspiration, and I'll finish with this because I'm not good at stretching these things. But when we want to have high aspiration, we have to remind ourselves first and foremost that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to let anything happen. Right? We all know what's happening to our brothers in Gaza and in general the whole Ummah. Right? We forgot everywhere else aside from Gaza. But think for 1 second. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do what He likes, how He likes, however He likes. We might have thought last year in January that, the Muslims in the West, the Muslims everywhere else, they're losing their Iman. And it's true, maybe we are. All of a sudden this thing happens and we see a huge wave of Iman that is growing. Where does that come from? Did anyone expect this? Not at all. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first step to having higher aspiration is to hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first step to have high aspiration, to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does what He wills. And whether we like it or not, Allah will take this deen to its completion. We just have to worry about, are we going to be part of that or not? The other thing in high aspiration is, that's part of the first thing actually, is be part of that thing, how would you say? Be part of what Allah is going to create on this earth in terms of goodness. That goodness is only going to come from Allah. Be part of it. Right? How many people are in this area? Right? Just these few blocks here, not even past the bridge. Just here. And if all of them came to the masjid, would we have space to pray? No, we wouldn't. Right? We have to ask ourselves, how many people do we know that we have called to the masjid? We think, it's the Imam's job to speak about it on Jumu'ah. It's the job of the brothers that are going out to call people. No, it's your job. It's my job. It's all of our jobs. The few people I know, I've told them, brother, akhi, I haven't seen you in the masjid for a while. What's happening? If we see something in the Muslim Ummah that is a problem, and we have a strength, put yourself forward and work for it. If you have a degree in something, for example, you have a degree in, let's say, IT, anything. Doesn't the Muslim Ummah need what's it called? Need software infrastructure for Muslim, for da'wah, for masajid, for everything else? Right? Doesn't the Muslim Ummah need all these things? What we do is we'll have the Muslim Ummah has so much potential compared to everyone else. But the problem is the Muslims also, they don't realize that they have to use it for themselves. They don't realize that this potential is being used for everyone else. And you getting paid at the end of the month doesn't mean that you won. The main benefit, why would I buy something from you? Because I think the value that I'm getting back is more than what I'm giving. Why are you being hired by someone else? Because the value that the employer is getting from you is more than what he's giving you. The value everyone else is taking from the skills of the Ummah is naturally more than what they're getting back. The Ummah now has to start thinking about, what am I talking about the Ummah for? There's like 50, 60, maybe 100 people. I don't know how many people are here. This is what aspiration means. It's for us to think that each one person here has enough to change a city. Each one person that I am speaking to has enough to change a province. Each one person here can go and call another 10, who can call another 10, who can call another 10, who can get through to 1 million. That is aspiration. The point here is not to give a plan to anyone. The point here is to give an idea. You have to make a plan. You have to figure out, what are you doing for the Ummah? Right? The easiest thing, people say, I'll make money and I'll donate. Sure. What skill do you have for the Ummah? If you're funny and you're sociable and your people like spending time with you, do you use that to bring people to Allah? Right? And if people don't like spending time with you, then you're definitely good at something else. If you can write, are you using that for Allah? If you can, well, I said spend time. Maybe some people can't spend time with other people and be funny, but they can speak in a way that's beneficial. Are you speaking and bringing people to Allah? If you have a skill, any job that you have, are you using that job for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There's something everyone has. There's something each person here has. We have to ask ourselves, are we using that or not? Are we using that or not? And the first thing, in my opinion, for that to be done properly, aside from, we said, high aspiration, the next thing you need after high aspiration, what are the two other, we have the Muslims, and the two other religious groups that the Prophet ﷺ always compares us to is the Jews and the Christians. And one of the problems that the followers, or the people who claim to have followed Isa ﷺ, the Christians, is that they did a lot of things for their religion without knowledge. This aspiration needs knowledge. How many of us, and the knowledge needs aspiration too. How many of us have heard, I was going to say other examples, like we've heard of scholars, we've heard of hadith, and haven't gone to read them, but forget everything else. How many of us have heard, we're Muslim, we know the Quran is from Allah. How many of us have gone out of our way to read the Quran? And I don't mean in Ramadan read like, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, like that. How many of us have gone out of our way to read the translation of the Quran? You say, oh, I am not able to. Well, the ulama have written translations of it to help you. And you have access to them in your local masjid or wherever you are. This message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has come. We're hearing it every single day in the prayer. How many of us can translate properly Surah Fatiha? How many, and maybe that's easy, right? How many of us can properly translate Surah Falaq? Including the ones that know Arabic. ما معنى ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب? How many of us can translate that? This is where aspiration starts. There's a long talk, whatever, about emotion and motivation and how to build aspiration, why we should build aspiration. This is the point now where we have to finish, because when we talk too much about motivation, then that becomes the amal, that becomes the action. You're talking so much about motivation, that is the action now. And you feel you did something. I don't feel I did anything over here. However long I've been talking, I don't know, 30 minutes maybe. I did nothing, I did jack. And neither did you. We have to finish it, now we have to make an intention. What are we doing next? What am I going to do to benefit and come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What is going to take, what's my first step? Do I know what Allah told me in the Quran? We always hear about the stories of the Prophets. Do I know what stories of the Prophets are in the Quran? Do I know anything about these things? أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا? Do they not ponder over the Quran, or are there locks on their hearts? Allah says this not to the Muslims, He says it to the kuffar, to the people who are kafir, who don't have Islam. What's the first thing I do when I have a friend I want him to convert? What do I give him? What's the gift I give him? Huh? The Quran. Now just think, لو قلب الأمر على وجهه, what's he going to do? He's going to come, what if he comes and asks me, he's intelligent, he's like, did you read the Quran? What am I going to say? I say, I didn't read it, but I think you should read it. He's going to say, if you never read it, why should I read it? Right? Why should I read it? Like, can you tell me something about the Quran? How many of us can tell someone something about the Quran? In Ramadan, we've listened to the Taraweeh here. However long we stayed, if we stayed for the full khatma. But on Eid day, if you asked me, give me one verse, one ayah that hit you this Ramadan, that you felt it taught you something, that Allah told you something in this ayah. I'll say even the people who led Taraweeh, in this masjid or anywhere else, was there one verse that hit them? We have to all ask ourselves. The first step to having high aspiration is to know how low you are. And knowing how low you are is not a bad thing, because when you're at the lowest level, The only thing you have is to go up. Everything you do is a win. We have to ask ourselves, where are we? What's our first step to benefit? Okay, so much to do. What do we do? Khalas, you have Sheikh Umar, Mufti Millo, Maulana Sheikh Sajid. How many of us would go and ask them? When's Sheikh Sajid's tafsir every week? What day? Huh? If you did that, that's good enough. Huh? Sunday? Huh? When does Sheikh Sajid do? Whatever the programs are we sitting in this program? Tafsir. Huh? Do we know the schedule? Myself included. Do we know the schedule? If not, I should be ashamed, and so should you. Okay, then that's different. I'm saying in general. That's a good objective. In general, are we taking that? The point is, are we taking the choices that we have, the avenues that we have? That's one thing. The next thing is, now think, what do you have that you can give someone else? What do I have that I can benefit the Ummah with? I'm not going to answer that for you. You have to answer between you and Allah, right? But, and we started with this hadith and we'll finish with this hadith. Al-mu'minu al-qawiyyu khayrun wa ahabbu ila Allah min al-mu'min al-da'if. The mu'min that is strong is better and more beloved to Allah than the one who is weak. Both of them are good. وَفِي كُلٍّ خَيْرٍ احرص على ما ينفعك. Be keen, want good for yourself. وَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. And hope and ask Allah for help, because you won't be able to do anything yourself, and neither will I. No one will. وَلَا تَعْجِزْ. And do not be helpless, because when you have Allah, there is no need to be helpless, because everything is from Allah. وعلى الله فليتوكل المؤمنون. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. بارك الله فيكم.